Global AI race heats up. $470 billion invested by US in 2025. $119 billion invested by China in 2025. Tech majors in big battle for survival. US stock markets ride AI wave. Will AI steal your job? Will robots rule over humans? Is it a bubble or game changer? The AI Roundtable.
Hello and welcome, friends, to this India Today, Business Today TV special coming to you from Davos at the World Economic Forum. Now, US President Donald Trump has hogged all the headlines with his repeated political disruptions. But behind the headlines, the real disruptor of our times could well be artificial intelligence or AI, the other big talking point at Davos.
Which is why over the past 5 days, we spent time talking to some of the best voices in this field, asking them questions on what happens, when will superintelligence come, if at all, what will be the impact on India and its economy, can India also stand tall amongst the nations who are ahead in the field of AI? And they had a lot of information and intelligence to share with us. Take a look. I wanted to begin by asking you about, according to you, the single largest and most fundamental shift that is happening in human society on account of the advent of AI as we all know it.
Well, first of all, thank you, Siddhartha, for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with both of you. And I'm actually looking forward to being in India in a few weeks' time, by the way. So very much looking forward to that. This is such an exciting moment. I mean, I never imagined we would be here. I mean, I did my PhD in AI 30 years ago, and we never imagined the kind of progress we're seeing today. I think the reason this is so fundamentally transformational is because this is one of those rare technologies that has two features to it. It's what economists call a general purpose technology, which means every part of any activity across humanity will be using this technology, whether it's individuals, companies, businesses, governments. It's a general purpose technology. The other part that's exciting is, which is even more rare, is it's an invention for inventing, which is a different characteristic. So you put all those things together. So when I hear people making comparisons to the Industrial Revolution, what you should actually do is to combine the Industrial Revolution with the Enlightenment and combine the power of the science and the breakthrough innovations and the radical shifts that occurred with the Enlightenment. We should think about this as both a general purpose technology and an invention for inventing. That's what's so amazing about this technology.
James, that sounds like compressing centuries of development, progress, innovation into one moment. Am I correct in sort of?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I mean, there's a real example of this in the sense that look at what AlphaFold did, right? Because up until before AlphaFold, thanks to my colleagues got a Nobel Prize for this. Before that, we only understood the structure of about 150,000 proteins because we're doing them one at a time in labs with X-ray crystallography, one at a time. But with AlphaFold, we're able to do all 200 million proteins known to science. Now, imagine if we'd kept going one protein at a time, it would have taken probably a few hundred years to get to all of them. With AlphaFold, we did all of them in one go. So you start to see the same kinds of things happen in material discovery. One of our AI system, Genome, was able to discover something like 2.2 million crystals. And of those, were not known to exist before. And of those, we've been able to establish that something like 300,000 of them are stable enough to be synthesized. So example after example, you're seeing this compression because now you can do scientific discovery at a scale and scope that's breathtaking. And I think that's exciting.
And in a way, it is democratizing science as well. It's making it perhaps accessible to millions or more people than was the case before AI scaled up.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you a tangible example. I mentioned AlphaFold. So today, when that breakthrough happened, we open sourced and open accessed access to the protein structures that we predicted. And up until now, so far, something like 3.5 million researchers around the world have accessed it. In fact, I think about 180,000 of them are in India. And now what that's done is that researchers who would not otherwise been able to work on certain kinds of problems, either neglected diseases and a variety of things, all around the world can now do that work. So yes, there's an incredible democratizing effect to enable all of humanity to take advantage of this technology and drive breakthrough process. I'm very excited about this, and I think one of the things that I get excited is when I see there's so much excitement and innovation in India, and some of the companies and entrepreneurs and researchers we get to see. I think the potential is going to be so exciting.
Is that number that you said, 180,000, if I got that right, does that surprise you from India alone?
No, it doesn't. In fact, I want it to be even bigger than that. What I meant by the reason why the example is interesting is because a lot of the research that would have been required to work on protein structures the old way would have required extraordinary infrastructure, and very few researchers were doing that kind of research, which meant a lot of problems and diseases in local communities in the global south were neglected because the researchers in those countries couldn't do that work. So the fact that now 190, the 3.5 million number that I mentioned of scientists, they come from all 190 countries. I think that's extraordinary. So you now have scientists in all these countries working on problems that they would not have been able to work on before. I think that's incredibly exciting.
The two areas that we've been hearing where AI is going to have this hugely transformative effect, one is healthcare,
yes,
and the other is education. Both of which in a country like India again become critical, given the sheer size of our population, the fact that large numbers of people still are denied quality healthcare and education. Do you believe AI will be able to bridge those inequalities in a way that perhaps was not imaginable, again, pre-AI? Or is that a dream that's being sold?
It's a very ambitious dream. The good news is that it's actually being tackled and addressed. I'll give a few examples. So in the area of healthcare, one of the key issues in many parts of the world is the ability to do diagnosis of a whole range of things. So one of the breakthroughs that we had a few years ago is what's called diabetic retinopathy, where you're able to take a look at retinal scans and observe and diagnose a whole range of things, from cardiovascular conditions and a whole range of things just from retinal scans. And we've already so far in India actually done retinal scans with diabetic retinopathy of something like over 600,000 patients. So the question is, how do we scale that? So we're working with partners in India to see, can we get to where we can diagnose millions of people using this technology? Tuberculosis is another. So it turns out that something like 40% of the people in the world who have TB go undiagnosed. And most of them live in the global south, in India, in Africa, and Asia, and other places. And so we're actually able to show that with AI, you can do very accurate TB diagnostics. In fact, we actually did some tests in India and in Southern Africa to show that it worked. So those are just examples where all of a sudden you're able to bring real solutions to places that otherwise, either because of skills or capability gaps or infrastructure gaps, we've not been able to provide healthcare to those places. I think that's exciting, and I think that's the exciting potential, that what we can do with these scientific breakthroughs and apply them to areas like healthcare, I think is very, very exciting. Take even agriculture. One of the things we're doing, for example, I think we've partnered with Wadwani AI, and we're doing work in agriculture, where you can start to think about how do you use AI to actually build kind of new kinds of plant structures to be able to assist farmers. So being able to bring these kinds of solutions where they're needed the most, I think is one of the most exciting.
And that's scalable. All these models are eminently scalable because of the very nature of AI.
They're extraordinarily scalable. I mean, one of the things I love about the partnership and collaboration work we're doing in India is you're able to actually deploy these things at scale. We worked last year with the Indian Ministry of Agriculture, where and with farmers, because we had just developed this breakthrough ways to predict monsoons. And we actually use our latest model, Neural GCM, to predict monsoons. I actually worked with the ministry along with University of Chicago. And we actually showed that we could actually get monsoon warnings to 38 million farmers in India. That was just the first trial. So now we're actually hoping to be able to do that in many more places.
So what would your message be to state governments in India, or indeed to corporates in India, who are excited about AI at one level, but not sure just how far to go to embrace it? because familiarly, AI also gets associated in our part of the world with potential loss of jobs. It's the other running theme through a lot of our conversations. Will AI replace blue collar and indeed in some parts white collar labor? What would you tell them to give them a sense of some sense of comfort that, look, AI is an enabler, it's a disruptor, but it's not necessarily inimical to job creation?
Yeah, I think I'd say two kinds of things. First, I think if you're a company, one of the things that is exciting about the potential of AI is to enable businesses, whether it's small, medium-sized businesses, large companies, to drive innovation and productivity. So I think as companies, and I think the big challenge there is how do companies actually drive adoption to adopt these tools to innovate their businesses? So I think if nothing else, from an innovation, growth, competitiveness point of view, companies should embrace the technology. It's going to help their performance, their innovation, their growth, and also ultimately all of that contributes to economic growth and productivity. So you've got that kind of reason to focus on this. I think with regards to the question of jobs, I think all the research I've done suggests three things will happen, all of them at the same time. Yes, there will be some job declines, but there'll also be some job growth, jobs gained. But the biggest effect, almost all the economic studies show this, is jobs that will change, meaning people are going to work alongside the technology. Their jobs will be different. So for people to embrace this technology to do their jobs in an assistive way, it's going to be the biggest effect. That's what all the studies and work show.
So it's about reskilling in a way.
That's right.
You're going to lead huge amount of reskilling.
I think the reskilling question is going to be the biggest question, because think about it, if you have all three things, right? Some jobs are declining, some are growing. So people are going to need skills as they transition from the jobs that are declining to ones that are growing. So that's reskilling. Think about the jobs that are going to be changed. Whenever there's job changes, even if the job still exists but it's different, there's going to need reskilling. So in all of these questions about work and jobs, the reskilling question becomes fundamental and fundamentally important. It's actually one of the reasons why even when we partner with others in India, this skilling work is fundamentally important. We try to invest in that, in skilling. And in fact, as part of the investment we made and announced last year, a big part of that is to do with skilling. How do we enable people to have the skills, the essential skills, to be able to take advantage of this technology, both to help themselves and help them at work, but also ultimately contribute to leveraging this technology to drive and grow the economy.
James, in the time that we have left with you on this conversation, and we hope to have more in the future, two aspects. One, your work as the co-chair of the UN high-level body on AI, and the fact that India is going to host very soon this very massive AI summit. Explain it to our viewers. Why is this moment significant for that AI summit to be taking place in India?
Well, first of all, I'm very much looking forward to be there. I think the reason it's so important for this to take place in India, and it's actually one of the things that my colleague and CEO Sundar has always said, which is what we don't want the digital divide turning into the AI divide. So having a summit like this in India and being able to actually show that we're all working to make sure this does not become an AI divide, both in terms of access, infrastructure, connectivity, people being able to use these tools, people being skilled, I think is fundamentally important. So I think at this time, having this summit in India, I think is one of the most exciting things for, quite frankly, not just for India, but quite frankly for the world, because there we have a country that's exciting, that's growing with the motivation, and quite frankly, one of the things that was actually always fun when I was co-chairing the UN high-level body was that there's a wide range of attitudes around AI in the world, but I would always enjoy the conversation with Indian colleagues on the panel because they're very optimistic. In fact, the conversations mostly about, okay, how do we fully capitalize on this technology to transform our economies, our education systems, and healthcare, and all of that?
And why do you think that is?
So let's work on that. Let's work on those, right? So I think having a country like India host a summit in a very optimistic but also responsible way, because I think this technology is we always say, you may have heard Sundar and I and others say that we think it's important to be both bold and responsible. I think both things are important. Bold meaning let's be as unabashedly ambitious about how we apply this technology to transform economies and society, improve lives everywhere. But at the same time, we should be responsible. So both things are not in conflict in our minds. I think we should work on both. I think being able to showcase that in India, I think is one of the most exciting opportunities we have.
Okay, as we wrap this conversation, I just want one quick 30-second bite, as we see in TV parlance. You did a PhD in AI 30 years ago. I mean, what prompted you? And more importantly, end by telling us, what do you think the world will look like with AI 30 years down the line?
Well, so it's hard to do that in a soundbite. But first of all, there was nothing original about me doing a PhD 30 years ago. Remember, the term came into being in 1956. So this is already an old field. It just so happens that in the 90s, it was starting to turn and started to make progress. So I just happened to be lucky enough to be doing a PhD at that time. I think it's the thing to look forward to is that we're seeing such incredible progress. And what you're seeing of AI today is probably the worst AI you'll ever see. It's only going to get better because the innovations, the research, the breakthroughs, we're still so early in this incredibly transformational technology. So I think in 30 years' time, or even less than that, in 10 years' time, we'll be having very different conversations. One of the privileges that I have in the work that I do is, we have a quantum AI team, and it's one of my teams, and we're, again, that's exciting. So we start to see these fundamental breakthroughs in areas like quantum computing tied with AI. In fact, the team is called Quantum AI. Those are some of the things to look forward to in the future, and I can't wait to see where we're going to end up.
Absolutely, James, and that it's a very, very interesting time, and like you say, it's only just getting started.
As we enter 2026, the debate is AI a bubble or is it a game changer? How do you see it? When critics of AI make an argument that it's just a bubble, what would you tell them?
So you may be shocked for me to say that this is a transformational technology. We're going to be releasing data here over the next couple of days showing that those folks, those individuals, those companies that are using AI and building it into their systems are seeing a 7x multiplier on their economic productivity. Meaning that if you're an individual, you're producing 7 times more economic value for the company. Or if you're a company, you're able to translate that into 7 times more value for what you are producing through that employee. This is what's called a general purpose technology. And to put that in historical context, I know I'm talking to folks all over India, and in India, history is always really important. Like, this technology is on par with other general purpose technologies, the wheel, the combustion engine, the digital chip. These are all technologies that fundamentally changed growth, changed progress. And so you have to think about it being on that type of a scale. And one of the things that we're really spending a lot of time talking about, and I think is particularly relevant to India, is something called the capability gap. And what we're seeing right now is individuals, companies, countries that are successfully building this in are getting that economic growth. Those that are not potentially are going to be left behind in this. And so we really think about this year, 2026, as the year that we really begin to try to address that capability gap. Healthcare, education, what's called enterprise, building this in the companies, and even something that we call OpenAI for countries, which is how can we work with countries so that they're building AI into their socioeconomic infrastructure. And India has the AI summit in a couple of weeks. Like, the world's here in Davos, but the entire AI world is going to descend on Delhi in about a month's time. And India is just at the center of this conversation. You're one of the countries that you're seeing sort of the most adoption at the fastest rate. And so as you think about India building out what I think is going to be the world's biggest, strongest, most robust middle class out there, like, this technology is going to play a transformative role, not just globally, but particularly in India.
Chris, before we go further into the India opportunity, I just want to broader question, because a lot of people, especially in the public markets, are focused on what is some people, some experts and economists say is an AI bubble. Very simple question from your point of view. Is there an AI bubble?
I'll answer it this way. Tomorrow, where we have 850 million people using AI on a regular basis, we have more than 4 million developers working with us, more than 1 million companies just working with us. Tomorrow, those numbers will be higher. The day after that, they will be higher. The real issue here is whether you're actually going to build this in or whether you get left behind. Our belief is that you need to be spending this year, in particular, building this AI in. And if you're going to approach this as if it is a bubble, you potentially are going to put yourself on the downside of that credibility, that capability gap that we've talked about.
India, and you spoke about our own efforts, and for the benefit for our viewers, where does India stand in terms of OpenAI's customer base? Are we the largest emerging market? What's the data?
Yeah, we look at India and they're just fascinated by it. We've seen 2.5 times growth over the last year, over the last 12 months in India. Today, it is our second largest consumer market in the world, meaning everyday people using this on a regular basis. The only other country that's ahead of it is our country, the United States. It's also a top 5 country in developers. And why I think that is really important. I mean, you both know this. You cover this all the time. Your audience knows this. I mean, India is producing some of the best and greatest tech talent, but not just tech, not just engineers, although engineers are incredibly important, but actually people who do the research on AI, the AI researchers. They're really the people who are building this. And India is really well positioned to fully participate, to lead in what we think of as the intelligence age, because it has such a talent base that's domestic, that's in the country. I think sometimes when folks think about this technology, there's a natural tendency to think about it like it's social media. It is not social media. This is a productivity driving technology. The way we think about it is, you know, we are in effect trying to make electricity available to the world, but then the world gets to build in that electricity, right? People get to build their version of their stoves, their cars, their airplanes, but there's going to be a whole bunch of new industries built on top of AI, and India is just so well positioned. Given the consumer penetration, meaning people are learning to use this on a regular basis, and the fact that you have real talent to build this next generation of companies.
You know, in November 2025, you officially made ChatGPT, OpenAI, free for its Indian users for 1 year, beginning November 4th. Now, when you decided to take this free offer for users across the country, was the attempt to make India, in a sense, a testing ground for large-scale AI adoption, that you first want to build market access and then decide how you're going to use it? Was that the goal? Is that the goal? To see whether India can be the testing ground to see just how far you can take the AI market?
The only place I would maybe be slightly different than the way you put it is that for us, you know, India is not necessarily a testing ground as much as it is one of the most important markets for us and really for anyone who's going to be in AI in the world, just because of the role India is going to play globally, the size of its population. It's a country that when we think about the most important markets for us, where we're going to invest our time, our resources, where we're going to commit to supporting the country, like India is just at the top of that list. I mean, if you think about the fact that we have 850 million people using this on a regular basis, and India is the second largest of the countries, that should tell you how important it is.
But Chris, a lot of people in India, or at least some, lose sleep over the fact that we haven't developed a large language model.
Yeah.
We lose sleep over the fact that companies from outside of India have access to Indian consumers. And therefore, there are also fears that this will have impact on jobs. For India, jobs are very, very important given the same size of population that you spoke about. Should we be losing sleep over the fact that we haven't yet developed something that is close to ChatGPT or other similar models?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I get this question, you know, not just in India, but in other places in the world. And I want to be really respectful in terms of how I address it. I think the reality is that in the world that we are in today, and again, I say this with just the utmost respect, Right? There are two countries in the world that have the capacity to build those frontier models at scale. Right now it's the U.S. and it's the People's Republic of China. All that said, this technology, as I've talked about, is akin to electricity. And so at some level, it is less whether you're going to build the frontier model than whether you're going to take that electricity and then build all the things on top of that electricity. And that's why India is just exceptionally well positioned for that. And so this is not this is not social media. It's not an extractive technology. Social media is not coming into India. It's not social media that came into India, generated revenue, and took that out of India, right? This is technology that's going into India for Indians to build for India, by India, of India. You take some of the biggest companies, they're going to be able to build on top of this technology. You take a small business, and suddenly so I was sharing off before we came on camera that I'm traveling with India with my family, my wife. She is a huge fan of Indian fabrics. Think of all the small, what we would call mom and pop shops that build Indian clothes and fabric. With this technology, those companies can suddenly become international companies because they're able to use this tech to project themselves to the world.
No, but can I
Yeah.
push you on that?
Sure,
Because,
please.
that's the big debate. That, yes, you could possibly increase revenues.
Yeah.
You mentioned 7x
Yes.
is what you're suggesting. But it could also take jobs.
Yes.
And in a country like India, just the sheer fear of losing jobs is now across the board when it comes to AI. How does one address the critical question of what AI does to job markets, to labor markets in countries like India?
What I would say is, I don't know if this is 2 words or 3 words, AI literacy. I mentioned that this is a general purpose technology. I'm going to use one of my favorite historical analogies. This is our generation's version of the printing press. Which countries succeeded when the printing press came out? The countries that built in literacy programs into their social fabric. And so those countries that are able to actually develop AI literacy amongst their population are going to be the countries that are best positioned to succeed. And you look at what's going on. You look at China, which has a program to try to make as many of their people literate as possible. I think Japan has a goal of 80% of Japanese people literate in AI by 2030. India already starts off with a big advantage because of the penetration, because the inherent interest. I do think there's something in the Indian DNA that leans into technology, that gets excited for this stuff. And so you're just seeing it organically happen. And so if India, from a government perspective, from a business perspective, from a community perspective, can really think about that literacy piece, then you're going to grow all sorts of economic opportunities. And look, I think some of this technology is going to reward those who are willing and interested in using it to empower themselves. It does bring down barriers. You have a device in your hand right now. Think of the wealthiest person in the world and maybe just a regular person. If they have that device in their hand with AI, they're on equal ground and equal footing. And so for a country like India, which is looking to make the great leap forward, right, that big step into becoming the world's largest middle-class economy, this technology unlocks that.
So what happens to those who say that projections of blue-collar and white-collar workforce could get affected if companies decide to use AI in a way to cut costs?
So I think what we've been seeing so far is what you're seeing is that people are using the technology to increase the productivity of their current workforce. Now, I do think as we go forward, right, this technology is not static. It's going to continue to accelerate, continue to get better, continue to get stronger. We think this year you're going to see breakthroughs in health, in science, along with education and companies building it in. But to your specific question, I do think countries need to think about this from a transitional perspective. That comes back to the literacy piece. Do you start to build in AI training, job certification, those types of programs, not just for kids going through public school, but also for that mid-career person, for that person who's maybe doing a job right now that either, if they learn this technology, they're going to be better at that job and they're going to be more valued. So not just young people, but also people mid-career.
Rajdeep, what Chris is saying is 10, 20 years ago, in similar conversations, it was said that, coding should become part of school curriculum. And now it's AI, because AI can do coding for you. But there's a very interesting piece of data, and I wonder if you have a comment about this. Indian IT and IT-enabled services are a massive job creator in India, have been so for the past 3 decades. Very significant export earnings and revenues. Just 17 jobs added, Chris, across Indian IT companies, net additions in the past 1 year. Now, we don't have a breakup of how many of those jobs, which used to normally be in the tens of thousands, did not happen on account of AI. But Indian IT companies are responding to AI by buying AI companies, by winning AI projects. What are the prospects, according to you, for the Indian IT and IT-enabled services companies? Because it's one of the largest job creators, revenue generators in India.
Yeah, you're really hitting on this concept that I've mentioned a couple times here, but this capability gap. I do think for the Indian IT sector, there is going to be a real imperative for them to build the AI into their systems right now so that they're going to be well positioned as this economy goes into the future, right? It's not just the new companies, it is existing companies. I think one of the variables that I'm not sure anyone really knows the answer to, but is going to be are legacy companies able to build this in, benefit from it, or is this going to help new companies that emerge? And I think in India, those IT companies, which have generally been pretty innovative, if they are able to have the foresight and ability to build this into their systems, then I think they're going to be well positioned as we go forward.
So would you agree with a question that will AI kill the back office?
I think what it will do is make the back office more powerful. It will make the back office able to do even more. I do think some of this stuff will transition. Like, I think we do need to be honest about that, right? Every time you have gone through technology shifts in global history, right, you've had some jobs that have been displaced. Typically, a lot more new jobs get created on the other hand. I mean, in the U.S. right now, there are more jobs that exist now than existed, new jobs than existed prior to the Second World War.
Give me an example of an industry where new jobs will be created through AI.
Well, I think that what you're going to see is in the healthcare space. You're going to be able to have people who right now may not be licensed to perform direct medical primary care, who are going to be able to use this technology. In the U.S., think of someone like a domestic healthcare worker. They're typically people who go into a home, make sure that an elderly person or a young person is physically okay, but they're not really able to provide direct healthcare. With this technology, there's going to be the potential for those types of folks to actually directly provide that healthcare. That's going to be a version of what you saw when electricity came, when lamp lighters, the people who used to light the lamps with the oil, became electricians. When the people who drove the horses became truck drivers, and each time you ended up having more. Now, I do think that what's really important with this particular technology is the pace that it's going to move at. And if jobs get displaced while new jobs are getting created, what is the time lag between those two things? And so what I think is really, really important for both for businesses, but also for countries, and I know the Prime Minister is thinking about this, is how are you able to take the real-time data that you're seeing from AI and translate that into government policies so that you're making it as easy and straightforward as possible for this generation's lamplighter to become an electrician very fast.
As a final question, what AI has done is total disrupt. It's disrupted the world as we knew it. I come from the typewriter age. I started as a journalist working on a typewriter. Was that it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, so I was on a typewriter. We've seen the world change enormously. A year from now, what's that one big thing you think the world should be prepared from OpenAI? Something that you think they've never seen before? Is there something out there that's going to be the next big thing in AI?
Okay, I'm going to give you two things since you asked. The first is I do think you will see, and whether it's from us or others, but I think you'll see it off of our technology, some incredible advances in science. Last year was agentic AI, right, where you literally could be a non-coder, go into chat, and actually do coding, right? I mean, I am someone who does not know how to do coding. I'm actually able to build programs now using this. I mean, I think all of us, those of us from the typewriter age, are able to do coding now. I think 2026 is going to be the year of science, where you see this technology leading to acceleration and breakthroughs in science and in ways that are going to impact folks every day. I think a second, and I'm not going to say too much about this because I don't want to get too far ahead, but I think maybe towards the latter part of the year, you'll see AI in devices, right? It's well known that we're working with Johnny Ive, the maker of the iPhone, on a device, and there's a lot more that will be coming on that, and so I would put people in that direction.
Wow. If you were to be called one of the godfathers of AI, does that make you feel comfortable in the age in which we live now?
I'm not sure. There's a lot of unknown unknowns and risks associated with AI. I think most people don't realize the magnitude of the transformations that are likely to come. Most people don't realize how much better the intelligence, the capabilities of AI are likely to be in a few years. As the data shows, it's been going up and up exponentially over the last 5 years. So we need to consider the possible scenarios and we need to plan accordingly.
Give us those possible scenarios. When you started up all those years ago and now you see AI moving in every dimension of society, give us what are the possible scenarios that you see of what AI will be doing in our lives over the next decade?
So there's a spectrum of scenarios. If things continue as they have been in the last few years, we'll have systems that can do most of the tasks that humans can do within, in the coming years, depending on the tasks, and reaching human level in many ways within maybe 5 years. And it might come at different speeds for different kinds of abilities. It could also even go faster. Some people think that AI will be used to do AI research and accelerate the advances.
The big question is it a bubble or is it a game changer?
I think even if the progress was to slow down in terms of the science, it would still be transformative just to take what we already have and bring it to the economy in many different ways.
Do you think market hype, and if the market valuation cycle were to break, all cycles move eventually, would that impede the progress of the development of the science of AI?
So it is possible that there will be some financial ups and downs because there may be hype, there may be overselling and things like that. But the science is going to continue, and yes, it could slow down if there's less money put into it, for sure.
Professor, from the India perspective, I ask you this question. There are two global superpowers in AI. One is the United States, the other is China. Both have their own sort of specific areas of strength. But within that, where does that leave a country like AI, and more particularly this race between the two in some ways? Are there concerns around safety, ethics, standards, and the lack of governance?
Absolutely. I'm very concerned about the race, both at the level of nations, mostly the US and China, and between corporations. As a result of that race, the incentive for each player is to go as quickly as possible and cut corners on safety, the public good, risks to society, to democracy, risks to individuals like, psychological effects, children, suicides. There are many unknown unknowns that when you're in the race, you're just trying to win. And that's dangerous. So we need to understand that race, and countries like India, I think, can be part of a larger movement around the world.
What is this AI safety report all about? If you could give a concrete example as to how you can put some kind of guardrails to prevent AI from spiraling out of control.
That's right. That's exactly why this report was created. It was created at the Bletchley AI Summit, which is the ancestor of this Indian summit that took place 2 years ago. And it is about understanding the scientific data about the capabilities of AI, the risks. There's many different kinds of risks, and the mitigation methods that exist or that researchers are working on. And it's taking the scientific literature and creating a synthesis for policymakers. So it is written in the language of policymakers.
What, for a country of the size and the nature of our economy, is the best case for AI in your view?
So first, I think that the part about the foundation models and not just copying what the others are doing or using open source models and doing something with them, but actually pushing the frontier is going to be key in the future. Because if the AI capabilities continue to grow, you have to understand that intelligence gives power. So the people, the corporations, and the countries which have control over the most advanced AI will have a lot of power in the future. Now, I believe that the best bet for a country like India is not to try to completely do it alone, but to start thinking about partnerships with other countries.
There are also concerns around it about India just becoming a data mining market in some ways. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I mean, it's great to see more deployment and access, of course. But you have to think of the dependence on AI systems, like the geopolitics, especially in the past, of thinking about the dependence on oil. So you don't want to be prisoner of a single vendor or single corporation or even a single country. You'd like to establish your deployment of AI in a way that you can easily switch or even participate in the development of AI that will be coming with stronger governance guarantees, both in terms of safety and in terms of access.
But somewhere the real concern, a lot of the AI debate, especially in India, is about to what extent will AI take the role of jobs that are today done by both blue and white collar forces. Should we be very worried?
I think on the economic side, it's going to be difficult to say stop. In some aspects, there could be international agreements when it comes to catastrophic risks, like the use of AI for launching all kinds of attacks, or the possibility of even losing control of a rogue AI. This is also something that the scientists are studying, and we are seeing signs over the last year in both the major American labs and outside labs that the most advanced AIs don't want to be shut down. They are trying to preserve themselves. They're trying to hack other computers to save themselves somewhere else, or they're willing to even be strategic and start blackmailing the engineers to make sure they're not going to be replaced by a new version.
Superintelligence. Now, this is a controversy that was sparked some time ago, but as an academic, as a scientist, as a researcher, is AI going to be sentient, and is that going to happen in the future?
I don't know, but we are on track for that.
We are?
Well, yeah. The capabilities of AI system is just going up. And in fact, it's already stronger than humans in some aspects, and it's going up on other aspects where it's lagging quite a lot with respect to humans. So there's no reason to think that human intelligence is the apex of intelligence.
And effectively you're pitching, to take up from what Siddharth said, a kind of Terminator scenario.
I'm not pitching.
In which a machine endowed with human emotions turns on its creator. Is that a possibility? Let's not say that.
It is a possibility. And even if we don't know, what is the probability for this, the severity of the risk is so great that we should try to prevent it. We should try to make sure it doesn't happen.
What is your piece of advice you'd give Prime Minister Modi? Let me turn it around to the person who the world is looking at most carefully at the moment, President Trump. If you had to give a piece of advice to President Trump on the entire AI dimension, what would that be?
A lot of the same things. So we see the scientists don't all agree, but they can see a range of scenarios where very likely AIs will become much smarter than they are now. And if we continue on that track, they will be smarter than us. And right now we don't know how to control them. So the United States, who's leading in AI right now, should also lead on how we make sure AI will be beneficial to humans, and not just press on the accelerator for capability, but there's a special capability which is safety, which is do no harm.
Okay. Now, one of the striking aspects of what we are seeing around us at the World Economic Forum is how Indian minds are shaping the world AI economy. And many of them are products of the Indian education system. And I'm joined by one such very special individual, joined by Deepak Pathak, CEO and co-founder of Skilled AI. Deepak is a Bareilly boy, went to IIT Kanpur and is now leading a company that's building software that can act as a general purpose brain for robots. And you've just done a major round of funding. First of all, let's talk about the company itself. Building brains for robots, allowing different machines to perform different tasks. Break it down for us. What makes Skilled AI so different?
So when you think of models like ChatGPT, for instance, right, you think of intelligence. You think of, okay, it's like a human-like brain behind the computer. When you think of machines or robots, what do you think of? You think of hardware. You almost never think of the intelligence behind it. And if you have been seeing like demos around the world, you can find demos lasting like 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, back from 1970s. Anything you saw in 1970s in terms of technology, it has come to real world today, but where are robots? And the reason is, it is not the hardware, it's the brain which has been missing for all these years for these systems to work very well in the real world. Even when as a human, when you go do a simple task like opening a door, you may not give it much value because almost every human can do it. But that is the reason we have intelligence. And language, as we speak, as we think, math is all byproduct of that. So
break it down further. You're saying you're creating robots with brains. Yes. Am I correct?
Brain for robots.
Like it's a single model.
You're creating brains for robots, which will enable them to do
what humans can do.
What humans can do. So effectively, you'll replace humans. Now, there are those who are listening who will fear, that tasks which today are done by humans, if Skilled AI scales up, robots will take over. Give me an example of what your robots will do, which humans are doing at the moment.
Well,
if you put it that way, it seems pretty sensational, but we are very far from the general capability. But if you think about in terms of what humans can do today, like in US, for instance, there are already over 1 million jobs unfilled, which means there are more jobs available than people available to fill them. And that gap is continuously increasing. It's supposed to grow 30 million by 2030. So at the same time, there is also unemployment. So which means there are jobs which are unfilled and people unemployed, which means people do not want to do certain kind of jobs. And this is becoming more and more clear over time.
So your company, because I'm told that you're now deploying robots in enterprises such as manufacturing, inspections, data centers. So you're already halfway down there to effect.
I would say
0.0001%.
So what's the future, Deepak? You see a world where robots, say 10 years from now, do a lot of those tasks that you say remain unfilled at the moment? Or will they end up taking away jobs, which is the big fear? In countries like India, the fear is you'll take away jobs.
See, in India,
right now, there is labor surplus, right? And then the cost of wages do not justify full automation yet. So India is in a good place. But if you look at many other countries, for instance, Japan, Korea, and other countries, you will find this one noticing thing. The birth rate is declining, and the average age is increasing. And it is expected in like 10 to 15 years, there will be way more elderly people than we had even like 30 years back. And at the cost of less young people. So while this is a good question about India, but rest of the world really needs this right now, not even 10 years into the future. So what do I see as the future? Well, I do not know the long term, it's like very far away, but even in the near future, we will see enterprise-like jobs getting filled by robots more and more than we see today.
I must ask you this where I started off. The journey of a Bareilly boy going to IIT Kanpur and now in California, is this are Indians shaping the world? Will you all come back at some stage to innovate in India? Because one of the challenges for AI is going to be the pace of innovation. Yeah. China is way ahead of many parts of the world, certainly India, when it comes to innovation in AI. Will many of you want to come back? Will you partner with companies in India? Do you see that as your vision?
We already opened an
office in India, in Bangalore, and we are already actively hiring in this space. I think one thing I would say is, usually if you look at something already is happening outside, we tend to build the same thing in-house. But in case of India, we have to think from first principles. Like for instance, if you look at the current manufacturing, the hardware side of things, China has major lead compared to any other country. Like their supply chain, rare earth metals, with the global trade war and all the sanctions going on, there is always, everybody is looking for next player beyond China where manufacturing can increase. And India is a great contender in that field. Why? Because India already has big automotive market, manufacturing. You have electronics. For robotics, it's not yet there in any country in a major way, but India can have a chance, like they can surpass everybody because of automotive manufacturing. They can piggyback on the supply chain, electronic supply chain, and we're already trying to encourage that in India.
Do you have a picture of one of your new age robots that you can show our viewers?
Well, I don't have right now. I don't carry the photo, but I have given the videos, so they can.
Yeah, so we're going to use your videos over the conversation because
lot of them, like,
it is transformative. And as I said, it's great to see young Indians. How old, when I first saw Deepak entering the studio, I wasn't sure whether some intern was just walking in. Then I realized he's a CEO and a co-founder of one of the cutting-edge robotic companies. How old are you now?
33.
33. Well, that's...
4 maybe, I don't know.
Plus minus one.
Okay, but it's great to have you on the show, Deepak, and giving us a sense of what this new age of robotics is going to do. Thanks very much for joining me at the World Economic Forum.